Can the participants hear me? We're just going to give our people signing on just a few more minutes before we start, because the numbers are still going up. We'll start in about 2 minutes. All right, it looks like our numbers have leveled off, so we'll go ahead and start. All right, we'd like to welcome all of our participants who have Zoomed in with us for this presentation. This is actually the third of a series. There are several that we've done previously. We did one on using psychotropic drugs, especially long-term injectables. We've done one on how to recognize the symptoms of mental illness. Then we started a 3-part series about the relationships between jails and their mental health system. The first one featured Cleveland and the relationship between the hospitals and the jails. Our second one featured Franklin County, who's building a brand new jail, and the things that they have done very innovative around treatment of mental illness in that. And then we were going to do a third part with featuring some small jails, but Lorain County is just so innovative and doing so many things that we really wanted to focus on them and give them the full amount to talk about what they're doing. And just to sort of set the stage, there's just, as you all know, there are so many people in the criminal justice system, so I'm probably preaching to the choir here. They estimate about 650,000 people are in jails and prisons across the state that have mental health and criminal justice issues. A lot of them used to be treated in the mental health system before they closed down a lot of the hospitals and put them back into what they thought was least restrictive environment, but that environment was never created properly. And so jails became often the de facto mental health hospital. And so in Ohio, we have a program called Stepping Up, where we focus on trying to reverse the cycle of persons with mental illness in the jail system and try to give them tools to do that within their own community structure, because every community is different. And so we wanted to feature a smaller community, because many of you that are participating may be from smaller communities, to talk about some things you can do. There are obstacles such as pretrial populations, lack of funding, how short they stay, unpredictable release dates, lack of data, lack of models, just a whole host of issues. Yet somehow Lorain County has figured out a way to overcome those obstacles and to put together a very effective reentry model. And we thought that we would really be excited to share that model with you. Hopefully you can take something back to your county that would be useful in your setting with your resources, or perhaps adopt their whole model if it's effective for your county. And so in that sense, we're just very, very excited to have you participate in this. And we're really, really pleased to have Andy Laventhal to present on this for us. He has been a very active participant in Stepping Up in his county, and I've probably called on him more than once to help us out and share their ideas, but we're excited now to feature their whole program on this webinar. So I'm going to send it over to Andrew. And if we have any time, it goes to 1:15. If we have any time for questions, we'll take some. If we don't, we'll try to get back to you individually, but put them in the chat box. We don't take any as we go, so we don't interrupt the flow, but put them in the chat box. And if we get to the end and you have specific questions for Andy, we'll be sure to talk about them. So Andy, I'm going to let you turn it over to you, but let you also explain your role with the jail, your position, and maybe a little bit about how you got into this before you launch into what you are presenting. So with that, I'm going to go blank so that we can give the full stage to Andy.
Thank you, Justice Stratton. I appreciate that. My name is Andy Laventhal. I'm a project specialist here at the Lorain County Sheriff's Office. Been involved in the jail for 25 years. Was in probation for technically 3 of those years. but started as a correction officer, have done every job in this jail from walking through the door as a person who didn't even know where the jail was located or anything about jails, to now having been the jail administrator, stepping away for a few years to clear my brain out, and then coming back in as a project specialist. And one of the things that was developed here in my absence by my predecessor was this reentry program. It started as a case management program in the jail on temporary grant funding through TCAP. And then we launched it into a reentry program full blown and tried to get some funding. And I'll explain more about that as we go in. But before we start, I'd just like to say thank you to the Attorney General's Task Force. Pleasure to be here. And I want to thank Sheriff Stemeti for allowing me to come in. Thank you, Dr. Tiley and Justice Stratton and NeoMed and the Criminal Justice Center Coordinating on Excellence, and Ashley, who's running my screens today. Ashley, I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. Don't want to bore people. Okay, so Sheriff's Office has a new idea. And if you're in the audience and you're thinking this is going to be reentry like you've heard before, this is not. This is county jail level reentry. And it's a different beast. It's a different animal. Next slide, please, Ashley. You're probably familiar with those traditional reentry programs in the state prison systems and in the federal prison systems. They don't work at our county jail level. Next slide, please. So the reason they don't work is because jails are not prisons. Although we both do similar tasks, the small things that set us apart and make us different are the very things that impede us from using the exact same type of reentry that has been around for 10 or 15 years, is polished, works good, is supported by funding, is supported by revised code in many instances, and is the law. Next slide, please. What's the big difference? Let's look at this page here. The prison habits, traits are in black. The county jail traits, these are our traits from Lorain County, are in red here. But we're dealing with 81% of our population is unsentenced. We don't know their release date. We have no idea. Prisons often have a 30, 90-day minimum sentence where they keep people in custody. Our folks come in, they can leave within 2 hours, 10 days, or 5 years, depending on how long it takes to adjudicate their case. We get them impaired, combative, in crisis when they come through the door, off their medications, exhibiting poor health, detoxing. By the time they get to prison, most of those problems are taken care of, or at least on their way to be very well taken care of. The prison systems benefit, and the federal and state prison systems benefit from centralized leadership. In your county jails, not only in Ohio, but in other states, it's broken up. There's 88 counties, sheriffs in Ohio. There's roughly 77 or so county jails. There are some regional jails, but those leaders come from the road patrol. They come off the streets. They're driving around in cars, enforcing laws and arresting people. The hierarchy in many of the prison systems has been in that correction system for a long time. So our leaders are elected every 4 years. Our jail management system, the computer information system that we use in the jails, there's 19 different versions. That was in 2017 when I took that count. 19 separate versions at work in the state of Ohio. So not everyone is on the same computer system, booking system, record system. And when we talk about electronic medical records, there were still a few counties working on paper for their electronic medical records. There's not consensus across the counties. Let's talk about support. There's grants, there's data, there's resources available for federal reentry. They are trying to branch out to the county jail level. It's in its infancy, but most things are geared towards larger systems where you have people that are available to take advantage of those. We're talking about county jails that may have 40 employees who don't have a person who's set up to engage with those grants and to look for those resources. Next slide, please. One thing of note there on that page, it's easy to go to the county jail, by the way, folks. All you have to do is litter or jaywalk or forget to pay your traffic ticket and you can come to jail. In order to get to prison, you have to be a sentenced felon. And so it's much easier to get into the jail. This page shows us, and Justice Stratton touched on this, some of these statistics vary. This 600,000 number was pulled off of a different website, but the resources are all pretty close. It varies from year to year, but 600,000 people get released from state and federal prisons each year. County jails release over 9 million. That's 13 times more people walking out the doors in county jails than in the state prisons and federal prisons. So we have that many more opportunities to provide resources and have an impact and try to get those people off on a better foot, have them leave in a better position than when they came. Next slide, please. So, okay, we jumped to here. The first video, if we could back up to one and see if it will run. This video is just an imagination of how prison reentry works. And the video is not going to run, and that's okay. We'll just go over it. Here you go. So in prison, they arrive in prison. The inmates get a sentence. They get a release date. They know when they're going to be out. They can apply resources one after the other, follow a nice plan, and everything works and goes according to schedule. When they get near release, then they'll engage with them and try to set up these reentry assists. And then next slide. They can do it that way because they're designed that way. They know when the prisoner is going to leave. If we use that same model in the county jail setting, this is what we get. We get a collapse because the person arrives in jail. They need some of the resources that we have to offer. They may want to take advantage of them, but they get out before we can give them those resources. Like I said, could be 2 days, could be 10 hours, could be 3 years. Next slide, please. We will definitely have time at the conclusion of this for Q&A because I ran too long once and I'm not going to do it again. So this will wrap up sooner. But so if you have questions, throw them in there. Let's talk about Lorain County Jail. 19% of our inmates would qualify to receive services if we built it along the prison model of dealing with sentenced offenders when they near release. Next slide, please. Lorain County Jail population turns over quickly. 40% of our inmates get released within 24 hours, 60% within 5 days. So we've got to respond quickly to these people when they get through the door. Next slide, please. The people that are coming in have significant needs. Justice Stratton touched on this. And if any of you are jail-related personnel, you know I'm preaching to the choir here. 62% of the inmates that we encounter are withdrawing or present with mental health needs. 23% of the inmates requiring detox. We are the largest detox provider in the county. 39% of the inmates show symptoms of mental illness. 31% meet with our psychologist. 20% receiving psychotropic meds. I think our psychiatrist meets with about 3% per month. The jail is built to accommodate these needs. Much of the jail's budget goes for mental health and medical costs and expenses to build a robust staff to be able to deal with this. The sheriff's budget doesn't include resources to help people once they've got out. These things that we're seeing here, that they drive costs, and those costs are important and they're required by law. We must meet jail standards, and it's expensive to do so. Next slide, please. So the jail standards that we talk about are 177 standards that they inspect each year. The money in the sheriff's budget is driven by fulfilling the needs for those standards. Hey, you have to have a health screening. You have to give a TB shot. You need to do health appraisals. You need to do mental health appraisals. You have to provide for medical care, daily med passes, et cetera, interventions. Sheriff's jails are designed to meet those needs, but they aren't designed to meet reentry needs, and that's what we're getting to quickly. Go ahead, next slide, please. So we did a study and we looked at the number of people that keep coming back and who comes through our door. 37% of the people caused 65% of the bookings from that 3-year study. That means roughly one third of the people caused 2/3 of the bookings. We get a lot of repeat offenders. 10% of them came in at least 4 times during that period. 52 people were booked more than 10 times. Our peak number there was 32. We had a gentleman that was in 32 times during that 3-year study. Mental health and drug abuse are commonalities amongst all these high utilizers. they're not just impacting the needs in the jail, they're impacting the needs in the community as a whole. If we're talking about making a better and safer community and the citizens that are in there and giving them the benefits, looking at the jail numbers is it just opens the door to it. These folks that cycle in and out, they're driving costs at the hospitals, they're driving costs with law enforcement agencies, fire, first responders, emergency services, what's going on in their home life, how are their children doing in school. The needs are trickle down everywhere. So if we can help them while they're here and get them on a better course once they leave, it's a worthwhile endeavor. Next slide, please. So reentry, the generic definition, applying resources to people nearing release in order to increase the likelihood of success and prosperity. So if you look at our numbers, 75% of the inmates that come to Lorain County Jail are nearing release from the moment they get in jail. They're within hours sometimes. So what can we do? If we're going to do anything, we have to do it quickly. Next slide, please. This is a look at all the releases and refers back to those numbers that we've already shared, but puts it in a pie chart so it's easy to see. The blue section there represents everyone in this nation that's released from prisons each year. Those are the people that are getting good reentry assistance, that have a well-formed 10-year mature system of reentry. The section represented by orange are the people that do not. 9 million people per year, 93% of those releases overall have very little support at the county, local jail level. Next slide, please. So we've come up with a program that we think fits this need pretty well, and it's creative. All inmates, whether you're sentenced or unsentenced, qualify for reentry. Reentry services are provided by our on-site employee, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Hey, that's not ideal, folks. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. is only 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. If you're in jails and you're in the jail business, you know that there's so many more activities that take place after 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Everybody else rolls up their shutters and goes home. And you're still left releasing people, finding places, finding transportation, finding housing, doing things to get these people off on a better foot. Right now, we've got 40 hours, and that's better than most. We're happy to have it. We'd love to be able to expand that. But we found that it best serves our purpose to have her right there in that slot. So our reentry proactively targets inmates who are most at risk. And the mantra for our reentry is engage, inform, encourage, offer, and act. Next slide, please. So we have one young lady, talented young lady that we're happy to have. She's working on her master's in clinical counseling, and we had her in the pilot program, and we've been able to retain her since then. But urgent standing orders for reentry every single day. 8 a.m. she comes in. First thing she does is run reports to identify who's come in the last 24 hours, or if it's a Monday, of course, we're talking about the weekend. Who's come in since the last time I was in the building? That, number one, is homeless, or number two, is on clinical withdrawal protocols. So those are our two big proactives. Anybody that fits those two needs is a target right away. She is seeking those people out. So she compiles that list off of our homeless questionnaire that was added to our booking questionnaire. That's a byproduct of stepping up. And our clinical withdrawal protocols is a byproduct of our thorough medical procedures. We have NCCHC accreditation here. Thank you, Sheriff's Committee, for supporting that. It costs extra money. So then she takes that and she walks down to every housing area where these people are located, and she gets with them one-on-one. She's interviewing them. Hey, I'm glad you're okay. My name's Alyssa. I'm the Reentry Coordinator. I don't know how long you're going to be here, but before you go, can I talk with you about some of the things we have available to you? We'd like to let you know that we have these services available for you when you get released, and I'd like to try and set them up if you'd like me to. 40% of our inmates get released quickly, so that's her list. She's going out proactively every day and seeking these people out. Next slide, please. So here's her full menu of services. So the menu of services that she's offering when she sits down and talks with these folks, the ones she proactively talks with and the ones that she reactively talks with, she responds to requests. She's talking about addiction, pre and post release services, mental health, pre and post release services, MAT we have here in the jail, transportation assistance, housing. We offer Narcan in training, Medicaid enrollment. Look, our employment assistance is on there, but it's not robust. That's one of the areas we're looking to improve. We simply have a list of felon-friendly employers that we provide. And we had something working there before COVID hit and destroyed it, and we haven't got back into it yet. But specialty court linkages and veterans court linkages, those are the 10 points that she hits when she's there and provides information to inmates. Next slide, please. So you can see this is a picture of her in the housing area. She gets in the housing areas, the inmates are brought out and they sit down one-on-one. This is a referral form that's available in the housing areas on paper from the officers. We just added tablets within the last week. We launched them. We're going to put this information on the tablets so that it can come electronically. That would speed things up a little bit. But she's down face to face with the inmates. This is her in our female housing area talking to a young lady there. Next slide, please. This is her in a male housing area. So this information that you see on the left side of the screen here is her referral form. This is the form that she fills out as she's engaging with these inmates, checking boxes, making lists, and giving her marching orders for when she leaves the inmate to go back and actually do the behind the scenes work, the meat and potatoes part. Timing is critical. Again, you've got to get that reentry person in the jail. They have to have access. They have to be to a point where they can get in and talk with these folks because we have them for such a short period of time. Next slide, please. So in order to make all this work, reentry work, you have to understand that most of the moving pieces in this reentry don't take place in the jail. The parts that I've just shown you, the last couple of slides, those are the only parts that take place in the jail. Everything else that she's related to for reentry services is outside of the jail. You have to build relationships with community providers, with health providers in the community, with SUD providers in the community, with the mental health, with job and family services for the benefit program. You need to turn around and look outside of your jail. Not every jail has the ability to do that. Thank you, Sheriff Stameti, for putting that in here in 2017, and he gave us the marching orders. Look, there's resources available in the community for the inmate population. Let's turn around and start engaging them. But every job in the jail that's in the jail is built because it's dealing with revised code-related compliance. Sheriff Stameti actually added this project specialist position to look outside, to engage with the community and see what kind of resources we could bring inside the jail. So that's what this page details. Again, the little red slot on the bottom there, the details there. 85% of the inmates in custody today in our jail are felonies. 49% of those felonies are violent felonies. We've got 10% of our population in custody is facing pretrial murder charges or aggravated murder or one of those varieties. So we have a lot of violent offenders here. They drive that length of stay. Our length of stay this year is actually up a little bit. But many turn over quickly, many get out quickly, but we also have a significant chunk of our population who's in here for a significant period of time. Those people are more likely to be taking advantage of the prison reentry services. Next slide, please. So as I told you before, there aren't many grants tailored to county jail operations. If they are tailored to anything that's looking at a county jail level, they are coming through the providers in the community that are more tailored to the providers. So you've got to be on your toes and you've got to be looking for those. I'll tell you a little bit about our program. We did our pilot program for 2018 to 2021. We added services as we went. It started as a basic case manager. Yes, here's your attorney's phone number, here's your court date, those kind of things, but evolved into something much better. And we took that data and we shared it with our Mars board and we said, hey, Mars board, we've got this program over here that provides these services, these tangible services to our entire jail population. And by the way, our jail population is 62% saturated by people with mental health and addiction problems. These are the services that we provide. We would like to know if you will fund our program and expand it from 20 hours per week to 40 hours per week and add stabilization by making it permanent funding rather than grant funding. Well, we engaged with them back and forth, made a few presentations. They talked about, they wanted data. Thank goodness we had data. Jails aren't good at data, but Melissa Fisher, who put this program together initially, she built it with data built into it. So next slide, please. Eventually, the Mars board said, yes, we will fund your program, and these are the things that we want you to measure and track. So this is our data. You can see here, these are the services that we provide through Reentry. Starting with Q4 of 2021, we were still on part-time basis there. Q1 of 2022 was the first period of time that we were full-time, 40 hours in the building with Reentry. And these are our numbers. And we're talking about, we measure, we show the output, we show the benefit, we show the positive actions that are taken, and we'll make some sense of this on the next page. This slideshow should be available to everyone, and you can look at these numbers closer. They're out there to share. I will gladly send them to you if you need to contact me and have a closer look at them. But for the purpose of this, we'll move on to the next slide. You'll still see some of them here. So this is the first of those 2 pages that were on the last. Let's talk about a couple of these numbers. Reentry, Alyssa, our full-time 40-hour per week Reentry Coordinator, engaged with only 18% of the inmates that were booked during 2022. If you look at Q1 through Q4, we put those numbers together, 18%. More than half of those that she engaged with were those people that she actively sought out. So more than half of the people that she talked with didn't even send a prompt to her that said, hey, I'd like some help. We simply sent her to them. What that tells us is that a small percentage of the inmates that come through our door know about or want Reentry Services. And it's not so much know about, because we're well known within the building here. The inmate population knows quickly. We have signs up, we have advertising, we push the services. What it tells us is that only the next line down, 58% of those people that she proactively sought, who were withdrawing from that opioids, declined the Narcan. Hey, no, I don't need any help, I don't want it. Of the 233 she did talk with who did say they wanted it, she was able to get it to 206 prior to release. That delivery rate has increased since we went from 20 hours per week for 40 hours per week. Understand, she makes her rounds and queries everyone. Then those that do want it, she comes back to and engages quickly with the training. Then she gets the kit, she gives it to the booking staff. The booking staff puts it in the person's property. It's there for them when they get out. But what our data shows us here is that significant numbers of people aren't ready for change or don't want to change. We have a lot of resources out there for people who don't want it. And sometimes you bang your head against the wall because you look at, she only engaged with 18% of the population that came through the door. But the reality is that those that she did engage with, those who did ask her, hey, sure, I would like some help here. What did the benefit provide to them? So in the black there on the right-hand side, you'll see what I consider to be the activities that have a tangible result from our 4 quarters of 2022. 206 inmates received that Narcan kit in training. 50 inmates were initiated on MAT while they were in custody. 37 inmates received Medicaid approval. 4 got their food benefits. 39 were not returned to a homeless condition. 17 inmates successfully entered a specialty docket program. And as many of you, if you don't know, that specialty dockets are designed to address needs. They have more resources. They can increase the ability of success rates and can exit people from the judicial system. If you often hear caught up in the system, those specialty courts can help get you out. 102 inmates were connected with veterans benefits. 74 received assessments while they were here, and we coordinated their post-release treatment. 452 inmates were connected to treatment prior to release, and 156 inmates were connected with and received visits from a peer supporter while they were in custody. Another one of the nonprofits we engage with. Next slide, please. So we talk about those 1,133 tangible services rendered. Some inmates obviously could have received more than one, but the cost of each of those, $86,000 is what our Mars board forwards for salary and benefits. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with how that works, but the benefit package on a public service agency is roughly pushing 1/3. But they're giving us $86,000 per year. So I take that 86,000, you divide that by those tangible services rendered, and it breaks down to $76 for each tangible service rendered. I challenge anybody to show that kind of cost-effective work for something that could save a life. Did that Narcan kit save someone from overdosing? Were those 37 inmates that received Medicaid approval, how are they doing today? Have they got better health care? Have their children received care? The food benefits, the people that got into the specialty program, the veterans that were linked, the assessments that we put together, those shorten, by the way, those chemical dependency assessments shorten the length of stay for a lot of our people. We find often, and that desire grew out of the judge's request for assessments. They very often give someone a personal bond and let them out, tell them go get a chemical dependency assessment and report back to the court or to a probation officer. Inmates, people fail to do that. They give them 2 or 3 bites at that apple. Then they're finally locked up for a longer period of time. Now we get their assessment while they're in jail. The judge can then make an accurate decision on what kind of treatment they need and set a course for that. So those are important as well. But $76 each. Next slide, please. So that $76, like I said here, this slide talks about that. Did it save a life? Would it lead to improved health? Did it end addiction? Was this the time that somebody got in treatment that ended addiction? Would these things have taken place if we did not have our reentry coordinator there? They're all tangible. I can't give you the outcomes of all of them. I would love to be able to do that. I don't have the resources for that. However, I can tell you that they left with a better opportunity than they arrived with. Next slide, please. So, in my opinion, the value of reentry should be measured by the tangible, resource-enriched opportunities that provides. Should not be judged by the opportunities that were left on the vine. We've got a reentry program here in Lorain County that's effective, that works, that can be duplicated. You can work cooperatively with your MARS board based on the data that we've gathered and show them, hey, this produces results. Look at these numbers. Are you interested in producing something similar to this? If you are, will you collaborate with us in the jail to put something like this together? Mind you, sheriffs change office every 4 years potentially. It's one of the inherent problems why reentry has never got down to the office of the jail, of the sheriff, because they turn over quickly. And people in jail administration turn over quickly. So there's not a real stable platform to build off of there. Sheriff Stemeti's been in office for over 20 years. So we have a mature jail staff here and a mature administration that has the ability to do things. If you're turning over every 4 years, all you can do is meet the basic requirements that you're built for. But this is a difference. This would take one of those quickly turning over jail staffs and allow it to have a pattern that's already set, to have an example to follow, including funding. Next slide, please. So our pilot program, I said, was developed by Melissa Fisher, and she's much smarter than I am. I'm just the leg guy. I'm the jail guy. We launched that pilot program. We got the funding for it, and we've had 1 year under our belt. We know that we need to have more mental health coordination. Look, we have 4 clinicians full-time here in the jail. They do a wonderful job with mental health care. And they do a lot of that post-release coordination. They're doing a bang-up job on it. But is there something else that we can do with reentry for those people that get out quickly, that may not engage with them, that didn't present with needs while they were in the jail? So that's our goal. That's our information. And that is the extent of my presentation today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A and I will ask them, but I do have a few questions to ask. So how much do you think made a difference with a sheriff that was willing to invest in this and understood it? And how does somebody who is in a county that doesn't have that type of sheriff, what would you recommend to them how to go forward?
Okay, so Unfortunately, you can't pull up something from the internet and show them, because every search you do for reentry on the internet shows a prison or a state system, and that's impossible, not impossible, but it's difficult to apply. So you have to be creative, you have to be aware, and quite frankly, Justice Stratton, I'm hoping that this program is available and an example to all. And if you're on this call and you need these resources, by all means, reach out. We will send them to you. People that have a rapidly turning over sheriff's office, maybe a sheriff that's elected every 4 years and it keeps turning. I don't know for sure what the answer is, other than to be creative, and maybe we can spread this through the Mars boards throughout the state, which have better stability and less chance for turnover.
Well, I have another opportunity that I will be talking to the key person about. Chief Justice Kennedy announced both on election night and in her acceptance speech when I swore her in last week that reentry is one of her primary projects. Has been since she was a public defender. She was also a former police officer, as you know, and she's already put together a reentry commission. So of course, I'm going to probably be recommending your project and you to her for that reentry commission, because that will be an opportunity to spread the word across the state through this leadership by the Chief Justice, and also to hopefully maybe get to some of the resources to support what you're doing in these nonprofits and Medicaid and all these other funding streams. So this is a very timely presentation, but for those in the audience, this is recorded, and the slides, I don't know if they're sent out automatically to all the people that signed up. I will find that out from Ashley, but they will be available on the Neomed website. And so you can share this video and these slides with a whole bunch of people. And I'll probably feature this in our newsletter, like I did your original report on what you were doing. But I think you have some real opportunities to expand this reentry with the leadership of Chief Justice Kennedy. So I wanted you to know that and the audience to know that we're going to really work on that. I have a question here. Thank you for your Scott said, thank you for your innovation and for your time today. So close that one out. Do you have a resource pantry available? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know your specific term of a pantry. What I see as a resource for us is our community providers. And if you'd like me to talk about our relationship with our community providers and how we evolve those, I'll be happy to do that. Okay,
let's do that next. But when we featured the Franklin County Jail, and this is an infographic in the packet of infographics we always send out to all of you folks. So Franklin County has a resource pantry. So when you leave the jail, you walk through this room. They started off with just trying to connect them. And then they realized they needed a cell phone charger because they didn't bring one and their cell phone's dead, or they needed some aspirin, or they needed some supplies, or they needed this. And pretty soon it developed into a full-blown room that has shelves stocked with all sorts of things that these folks can take with them, shampoo, things, just basic necessities. So when they walk through this room, they can get connected with resources, even if they didn't contact the person you have. And Melissa Pearson in Franklin County is in charge of that. So you might want to check that out as an opportunity. And there's an infographic. In fact, I'll make a note to send you the resource pantry infographic. But then Delaware did something too, very innovative. They have a little tiny, it's like an accordion set, and it's only really about that big, so it could fit into your wallet. And they hand it out to anybody that leaves their jail, and it has a list of places to call for resources. Do you have something like that? Yes, we do. We have a pamphlet like that that's available to everyone. That's really helpful. So tell us how you developed the relationships with the providers and what were your steps that you took to get there? Okay, so we had a relationship with one of the chemical dependency treatment agencies in the county because they were contracted through the recreation and welfare funds to come in and provide services
to inmates while in custody. And so when we started this, we expanded on that relationship, and we were engaged through Stepping Up. Stepping Up was really the igniter for all this, Justice Stratton, because Stepping Up brought many of those providers to meetings and to a room because, as you know, they often have people who are charged with developing their business, with growing their business, and jails don't have that. And so we easily meshed with them. When we opened up and said, hey, providers, we have an idea. We want to do something different. Please come and join us for a meeting. They all came. We had 4 or 5 chemical dependency treatment agencies within the county. We had our 2 major mental health treatment agencies in the county. We reached out to Job and Family Services because you wouldn't think of them right away. But in order to make those Medicaid applications go through quickly, you need somebody within that business, within that agency, who will receive your fax, receive your email, and prioritize your request, and just not let it fall between the cracks. So that works for both the healthcare and for the food benefits. When we talk about transportation, now we're talking about engaging at the county level. And I'll be quite honest with you, Lorain County's public transportation is abysmal. But we do have bus loop. We did get a bus loop that came out here to the jail. The health department is near us. A community-based correctional facility is near us, and so is the juvenile detention facility. And we added a bus loop that takes people downtown to Elyria, and we provide them with bus passes then that will get them throughout Elyria and Lorain to get them back home. When we talk about housing, you have to get involved with any of the housing providers, and Catholic Charities is a big one. And we are involved with them. We reached out with them. We met them. We have some meetings. Hey, we're going to provide this resource. Who should we reach out to when we have someone that's in need? And what can we do about getting them some more permanent, stable housing? They have a wonderful program where they take them in the door, they give them the immediate shelter, and then they work and have funding to then try and get them something more permanent while they're there. And so it's just extremely important. But again, most of this was initiated while we were involved with Stepping Up.
I'm glad to hear. It's exciting to hear that Stepping Up has had some real system changes, opportunities. And for those that are on the call that are not familiar with Stepping Up, it's a project that is a private foundation project. It's not a government project. We're not here from the government, but Peg's Foundation out of Hudson, who had the family had a son that was had mental health issues and got interested in funding this. And so they put this foundation together. And it's a national program called Stepping Up, that focuses strictly on trying to help jails break the cycle of mental illness in their jail cycle. And so when it came to Ohio, and I retired early from the bench because I wanted to pursue these issues and just was passionate about it, I became project director. And Lorain was actually one of our early counties to sign up. So we're very proud of what they have done, but we're up to 58 counties. We will do visits to every single county. We've done 58 visits. We're now working on second visits. I think we've done a second visit to your county already. And we bring all sorts of resources and grants and crisis intervention teams and NAMI and housing. And you pick and choose what can be beneficial to your community. So if you're not from Lorain and you want to see about a visit, or you can contact your county commissioners and see if they've signed up yet, it would be something that could really benefit your county and moving forward. So the other thing I want to ask you, I know that you've been very active in the crisis system work, and that you're working on a crisis center, I believe with the Nord Center. Can you tell us anything about that?
Sure, it is under development. We have drawings, we have the architecture, we've seen it. It is a wonderful, it reminded me, Justice Stratton, of what they've done in Columbus with the Franklin County Jail. The interiors look very similar. So his Franklin County Jail looks very similar on the inside to the crisis center that we're building in a public crisis center that's being built here in Lorain County. Diversion, that's what we're trying to do, divert those cases that can be diverted. Look, the bottom line is that I'm a jail guy. I've been in jail for a long time, and there's many times I've seen people that came to jail because they had no other place to put them. That was the third call that night for this person, you know, yelling constantly on the sidewalk and scaring all the neighbors. So in order to the police chief in that town, the only way to put that to rest is to take that guy to jail finally for disturbing the peace, even though that's really not often a jailable offense, but in that instance, you need it. Where could we have taken him other than jail that day and put him in the cycle and put him in the system? Certainly anybody that had a diversion center, a crisis stabilization center, it's very likely that he could have found a bed there, he or she, persons in those instances, but not just for those crises of acting out where law enforcement is called and involved. Mind you, that's a great thing to keep them deferred from the jail entry. But for the community in general, those persons in the community, mom and dad who are having trouble with their adult child who is still in their home, who is they're unsure, they're unsafe, they're worried. That gives them another place to go, another resource. And the benefit to that, it is not the emergency room, but it is still 24/7, and it can still take people in, and it can offer those emergent kind of services in a non-emergency room setting that gives people options. Hey, let's go here. These people are good at doing this. It's not a hospital. We're not taking you to the hospital. We don't want to go to the hospital. We need some help. The more of these we have in each community, the better off our citizens are at being able to deal with their needs in a variety of ways, especially after hours. It's critical. We're happy to be a part of it.
So one of the, well, let's backtrack. So crisis event intervention teams are when police officers are trained to know how to respond to a call involving a person in a mental health crisis. And in Ohio now, we have over 7,000 trained officers in all 88 counties. We have over 3,000 ancillary offices like EMTs and dispatchers and even hospital staff and library staff, because they often encounter people who have mental illness. And we sort of became a victim of our own success in Ohio. We had all these officers who were trained to take them somewhere else rather than jail. And they often couldn't take them to an emergency room and wait 3 or 4 hours. They had to get back on the beat, so they would take them to jail. And so these crisis centers are an alternative. We're trying to develop them. They're not nearly enough in Ohio yet, just a few, but they're such an important place. So the goal, I think, is to have the officer a place they could drop them off, sign some paperwork, get back on the beat. Then the crisis people will evaluate what are their needs. Do they need to detox? Can they get family members in to pick them up? If they're really, really sick and psychotic, maybe they need to be pink slipped or taken to a psychiatric unit because they're so sick. But if they're not at that level of care, they can help triage them. And families can take people there too, like you said, rather than having to call a police officer to take somebody there. Is that pretty much how you're seeing your crisis center going to work?
Yeah, and specific to the family portion, it's much easier to get a family in to that crisis center to lend the aid, to provide the information, than it is in a jail setting. I'll be honest with you, it's not easy to get out of this jail. We knock on wood, we haven't had any issues, but it's also not easy to get in if the police aren't bringing you in. There's gates, there's doors, there's security barriers, there's all kinds of things. In that crisis stabilization center, people can get in quickly, get out quickly. It's a safe environment, and it facilitates help. It facilitates healing, that healing process. So, and it's not a barrier. So yeah, the quick drop off and the quick exit puts the people back on the streets, providing the safety they need for the community.
Excellent to hear. So how many CIT officers, if you know, do you have in your county?
Well, Justice Stratton, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that we are very proud that here in the sheriff's office, we've been sending people, correction officers, jail staff, to CIT training, the 40-hour CIT training, for the past 15 years. Now, some of our people have gone on, but we still have on staff here today over 30 officers that are CIT trained, and those are the people that we put in our special needs housing areas. We have a wonderful special needs housing areas that's developed for the male population. Sadly, we don't have space and don't have the resources to have that duplicate process on the female side. There's talk of a new jail, and we're hoping for that. Very jealous of the jail I saw down there from Chief Stobart in Franklin County. However, yeah, CIT is important, not only in the jail And people need to, if you're on this meeting and you're anywhere connected to your jail or your county government, see that they have CIT people trained in there. But overall in the community, heavy saturation. We're running 2 classes a year with 15 to 20 people in each class. Been doing it heavy for 15 years that I know of.
Well, when I first, when I was early on, when I was elected a justice, I became very passionate about these issues. And there were about 100 CIT officers trained in Ohio, and 2 mental health courts. And I realized that this was such a better way to deal with people with mental illness. So one of the advantages of campaigning is you have to give hundreds of speeches over the many years that I was a justice. And I gave hundreds of speeches. And then when I got passionate about this, every speech was on CIT, or it was on mental health courts, or the need to change the system. So it became a great kind of platform for me to kind of push the agenda. But as we developed CIT, we realized we needed to expand it to other areas. Like we trained a whole bunch of people in parks and recreation. Where do homeless people go? Where do people with mental illness go? I had a very, very dear friend that committed suicide in our state park in Franklin County after his girlfriend had committed suicide in the very same spot a couple of months before. And so they deal with that trauma. And after we did one of our trainings, an officer came up, and I've had 8 suicides in my little park alone. So it's important to think beyond, your normal officer. But I'm so glad to hear that you're training your jail personnel, because I remember when Franklin County started their jail personnel training, I had so many officers say, I never understood what was happening to them. I didn't understand that they weren't just being difficult, but they couldn't understand what I was saying. And so it just totally changed the culture of a lot of the officers in that jail setting to have an understanding of why that person's acting up, what's going on, et cetera. Have you in any of your training used those visuals or those hearing things where they simulate what happens when you have schizophrenia and somebody's talking to you, or you're seeing other people? Did you ever go through one of those?
Justice Stratton, I have not, but I've heard of them. What we stress for our CIT people, and even our people who are not CIT trained, these interactions cost you time. All right. You've got to enter that interaction with the understanding that your time is what's going to take to resolve this issue. And that's the first thing, the biggest hurdle that most of them need to get over. They're so used to responding to calls or incidents where everything is fast moving, one after the other, boom, boom, boom. The biggest thing we need to teach them is to slow down. Slow down once you're there. Sure, get there quickly, respond appropriately, maintain your supervision in the area, in the housing area, or on the scene, provide that safety and security, but slow down. People need to understand more clearly. Look, there's many changes afoot in the judicial system, bail reforms, sentencing reforms. We've seen our jail population decrease here in Lorain County, but we still see the consistently high needs for these services, for this mental health service, and for this reentry service. Our clinicians in the jail do a wonderful job. Some of the only interactions for mental health that these citizens of Lorain County will have is why they are in jail. And they come in every form. It could be something, just a small crisis situation that they're going through. It could be situational, that they're just, oh my gosh, I'm locked up now. What's going on? I'm in distress. Or it could be some underlying orders. They could have depression. They could have anything. Our clinicians sit down with them and talk with them and get a baseline on them, and will provide resources and information, and will also help to calm and resolve many issues that pop up here in the jail. And if they can't, then the correction staff deals with them appropriately. But the best bet is to have understanding and education, and that's part of the whole mental illness in the jail. Understand that there are people in the community that have these mental illness underlying conditions. They're in our confined setting now. They present a whole different challenges than a person who does not have a mental illness condition, and you need to respond to it appropriately. As far as the reentry goes, I just want to restate to everybody, please understand, prison reentry and county jail reentry cannot, and most often are not, the same thing. If your model is built upon sentenced individuals, we in Lorain County simply don't have enough sentenced individuals to consume those resources effectively. And if we do, they may not want it. We need a larger chunk of the population because many people aren't ready or don't want it yet. So we have this model, copy it, use it, and see if it can provide some additional benefits to your community.
So if you had a wish list for what else you would like to see to make your program effective, what would that be?
I'd like to see 24 hours because there are people that we know by our numbers that only 18% of the people engaged with a reentry. I'd like to see that number go up. One of the ways I can make that number go up is to have reentry in the door more often, more frequently. If I could increase those hours, that would give me the ability to touch more people. It would also give me the ability to offer more services or expanded services. We touched on the mental health portion of the reentry, and reentry is the only job in our building that is focused on completely post-release inmate activities. And we need more on the mental health side, and we're working towards that. Now, when I say that, then all our clinicians jump up and down and say, hey, we're doing a great job. We're already interacting with these people. We're already setting these appointments up. Sure they are, but if I gave you more resources and we had more people and more talent, what else could we do? And so we're just looking towards that. We're still new. We're just new and we're growing. We've not been around for 10 years. We're not refined. We need to refine these processes. We look at our referral form. We look at the services that we offer. Can we branch out? Are there more providers that we haven't contacted? You know, every day there's a new provider that may throw up his shingle in the community and they come see us and say, hey, we want to get involved. Sure, give us your information. We'll provide it. We had to have a discussion, Justice Stratton. It's worth noting. There's a lot of community treatment providers that are have their spoon in the same bowl, so to speak. They're funding and they're competing with each other for funding, and they're competing to help people as well. But we had to bring them all together and let them know, look, we're going to offer your services and offer services in a consistent manner, alphabetically, and here's the sheet that we're going to do it with. Anytime a new provider comes in, we're going to recreate the sheet and slot it in appropriately, because when she's engaging with people for chemical dependency, we don't want to steer, we don't want to point. And I wanted to address that when we first launched this program, so that Sheriff's Committee wasn't caught up in something, you know, where someone was making a claim. So it's important to address that early and build that into the system.
One of the last couple of stepping up meetings we've had with some of the small counties, the judges have told us that they are hardly seeing any opiate anymore. And they are seeing mostly meth, and it's particularly fentanyl, or whatever they're taking is laced with fentanyl. But they have a lot of opiate treatment centers, and they don't have any. A lot of those centers won't take meth or fentanyl, and they said their fentanyl users almost always develop mental health issues. Are you seeing that in your community?
Well, we still see a very consistent 50-50 mix between alcohol withdrawals and opiate benzo withdrawal. We still have heavy opiates. Sure, we have some of the others, but those emergent life-saving necessary measures with the withdrawal protocols are for those. But I don't know that we've got that small problem. Of course, we're a bigger urban setting. We're smaller than Cleveland, Columbus, but we're very much like them, just on a smaller version. We have Lorain and Elyria, which are, you know, had industrial bases, which are in decline, still have the population centers. And so we experience a lot of the same problems, although we do have a big rural portion of the jail, of the county. It's just not populated as heavily.
Thank you. Well, I think we're to the end of our hour. We could go another 15, but we probably are. It would be nice to give our people a little time back on their schedule. The webinar will be posted. We will send the slides out. And we wanted to just really thank Andy and the sheriff, who's just been a huge leader in so many ways, Sheriff Stamati. And we thank you for taking the time to do this. And you did an article for me earlier about some of what you're doing, but that kind of led to this project. And we hope to do another webinar. Our team, our AG task force, that led by Dr. John Tilley and Dr. Holbrook, forgetting the co-chair, pardon me, of the treatment committee. But anyhow, we are going to be having another meeting next week to plan our next webinar and to see where we want to go with the next training that we have. So if you have ideas of what you would like to see us training, please send them to us. And we will hope to continue this sort of lunch and learn series. But we thank you for participating, and seeing that you are here is very, very important to maybe doing something like that in your own county. And Andy, I know, is just always so available to help answer any questions. So thank you, sir, for participating. And thank you, Ashley, for all your hard work in putting all this together. And we thank you all for taking the time to attend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.